welcome everyone. I'm delighted to be able to spend some time with you talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is coaching. What are some of the strategies that we can employ inside organizations to scale development? A little bit about me. As Sarah said, my name's Joan Peterson. I've been in the leadership development space for over 30 years, and I work with an organization called Bluepoint Leadership Development. As an organization, we serve leaders and partner with organizations all over the world, helping leaders to be as impactful as possible. We look at topics like coaching, communication, innovation, leading change, resilience, emotional intelligence. We work with leaders both one-on-one through executive coaching, through customized workshops and in-person virtual workshops on those topics. Really, we partner with organizations to help build the best leadership possible inside that organization. Again, today's topic is around this idea of coaching and what are ways that I can use coaching to scale development. Love that you're using the Q&A and putting your location in. Love that you're from all over. Please continue to use that Q&A widget to both ask questions, and I'll ask you to weigh in on a few things. Part of the reason why I like to engage with that Q&A widget is so that you can hear each other's perspectives, that you can weigh in on some of the things that we'll talk about. The agenda for today really looks like this. It will start first by talking about why coaching matters. And my guess is you wouldn't be on this webcast if you didn't believe that it mattered. We'll provide some statistics, some recent data around why coaching matters. The next two pieces of the agenda we'll look at really in conjunction with each other. We'll look at some of the coaching myths and debunking some of the things that we hear inside organizations, and really our belief is our myths around coaching, as well as a coaching process. What are some of the things that we've learned about a coaching process? How can we challenge our own thinking around coaching? My hope is that we'll provide you with research, tools, best practices, tips. We'll provide you with some resources by the end of our time together as well. So let's dive in with that first piece around why coaching matters. And I'm going to ask you to use the Q&A widget here and respond in that Q&A widget to this question. What are the benefits of coaching? Now, whether you sit in the seat of I coach inside my organization, I'm an HR business partner and I do provide coaching, or I've hired an external coach, or I've been on the receiving end of coaching, either from an internal coach or an external coach. Well, you are a coach yourself. What do you believe are the benefits of coaching? And again, would love for you to weigh in that chat pod, in that Q&A widget. When you think about coaching, what are the reasons why? Again, your belief is, my guess is you wouldn't be here if you didn't think it mattered. Why do we bring coaching inside organizations? And I'd love for you to weigh in. I have some thoughts around it, and of course we've looked at this as well. But I'd love for you to weigh in. What have you seen are the benefits? What have you identified as benefits? Love that. Thanks. Employee engagement. Yeah, I think you're right. I think employee engagement, a results-oriented culture. Fabulous. Like, can we tie it to results inside the organization? Objective feedback. It's important for self-awareness. Yes, people feel valued. There's retention issue. It's about relationship building. And again, I'll invite you to keep putting into the chat pod those things that you see or have seen are the benefits. And again, through the work that we've done, we've seen benefits like the ones you're putting into the chat pod. Engagement and productivity, increased performance, innovation, collaboration. And we just have to start looking around to collect the fact that coaching makes a difference. And then if we combine that, all the things that you've put in that Q&A widget, the things on the slide here, we combine that with this idea of, well, why does it matter today? Well, it matters today because we know that coaching impacts self-awareness. And there's tons of data around the fact that our global EQ has declined for 4 consecutive years in every area. Individuals with high EQ 10 times more likely to score higher in effectiveness, relationship, and well-being, which tacks on to some of what you've been saying there. When I see coaching work inside organizations, I see people stay. I see people physically and mentally have physical and mental well-being. I see them become more productive. This is according to the World Economic Forum of Work. 80% of the top 10 skills for 2025 are EQ skills. So the first three, why it matters today, all around EQ. And we know that coaching impacts personal awareness. We also know, and I'll share a few studies with you later, that coaching impacts burnout. And one of the recent statistics, 77% of professionals have experienced work-related burnout. And we know, again, that coaching has an impact on those characteristics associated with burnout. There's a dollar amount attached to burnout. This dollar amount, of course, is just in the healthcare system, but we know that there's a dollar amount inside many, many different industries around burnout. Couple of statistics that I don't have on this slide. This one just came out of Korn Ferry. That imposter syndrome and feeling stretched is a significant piece of data. 50+% of leaders are experiencing some type of imposter syndrome, self-reported again to Korn Ferry. So if you think about it, first-time supervisors to CEO, over 50% feeling some type of imposter syndrome. Of course, coaching can impact that as well. Last piece of data, again, not on the slide. This is according to the Neuro Leadership Institute. 51% increase in productivity and revenue in organizations with a coaching culture. So there's sort of statistics around hard data, revenue, productivity, and the softer side, which I still hard skills around retention and burnout. Significant impact, and again, significant impact, especially today. So let's take a look at the coaching process, and really this will be our agenda for the day. We'll look at three pieces of the coaching process. The first is around selection. Specifically, we'll look at, so how do I select candidates for coaching? We'll look at the process and we'll look at, okay, now that I've selected the right candidates for coaching, how do I identify the right coaching engagement or the right coach for that individual? We'll also look at, well, how do I prep the person being coached? We'll call them the talent and the coach. And then we'll look at measurements. And I know measurement is really difficult. And we'll look at, well, what are some ways that I can measure progress, measure results? What's the ROI of this? And is there a way for me to communicate and capture success stories, specifically around coaching? That's in the measurement piece, but maybe not the hard data. What are some ways that I can capture, communicate some stories? And we'll share some thoughts, some tips, some best practices around that coaching process. So let's look first at this idea of selection. And one of the questions quite often we're asked is this: well, Joan, how do you select the right candidates for coaching? It's a really tough question, right? And in a pure consultant form, our response is typically this: well, it depends, right? It depends on what you're looking to do. It depends on what are you looking to drive. It depends on who's the individual who what are you looking to do inside the organization? What resources do you have? So let's kind of take a step back. And again, I'll ask you to use the Q&A widget here. And I'd like you to respond to this question. When you think about your organization, who are the typical candidates for coaching? So when you think about limited resources, limited budget, who are the typical candidates inside your organization for coaching? And again, this is a question that I typically, when we engage with clients, we typically talk about, okay, well, who's the coaching for? And again, would love to hear your perspective. Typical candidates for coaching inside your organization. If you had to choose a specific audience or a specific population inside your organization around who gets coaching, who do you typically tap to receive coaching? If anyone, if coaching is something that takes place inside your organization. So I'll wait for you to put those in the chat pod. And one of the typical responses that I hear, again, I appreciate you folks typing in. New managers I see come up, senior leaders, so kind of two ends of the spectrum there: high potentials, leadership team members, frontline supervisors. So here, I think, which brings us to myth one, the most typical responses that we hear around this idea of coaching, ups, and who deserves coaching, is coaching should be reserved for the top of the house, high potential, and fix-it situations. So those are the three populations that I hear most frequently. Okay, we're going to coach the top of the house. We're going to coach our high potentials. And, we kind of have that problem that we want to get an external coach quite often into to fix. Now, I'll ask you to sort of suspend that judgment myth for a moment. And what if we thought about coaching like this? What if we thought about coaching should be accessible to all? We talked about all the reasons, all the benefits of coaching. What if coaching was more accessible? And I recognize this is aspirational. I think it's directional. So wherever we are now, can we potentially create an environment where coaching can be accessible by more than whatever is current for you? And so that's really the first myth. And my hope is throughout the course of today, you'll start thinking a little bit differently potentially around, okay, who are we offering coaching to? And might we be able to expand that in some way? Our second myth is this, and it kind of comes on the heel of the first myth. And sometimes we hear this, well, Joan, I get that. Like coaching should be accessible by all. And there are people, this is what I hear from others, who are just uncoachable. We do a lot of work in helping leaders become more coach-like, coach training inside organizations. Usually it takes about mid-morning and this will come up like, yeah, I get these are great skills, but I have people on my team who are uncoachable. And I share this with you, and every time I bring this up, I need to think about this for myself. As you think about your own team, as you think about those individuals with whom you work every day, when this slide came up, did anyone come to mind? Like, yeah, right, that person is uncoachable. And yep, everyone deserves coaching except for they just don't want it. And I typically challenge, and I'm going to challenge all of us here on the call. I typically challenge the leaders in our workshops. I believe that most people want to do a good job. I believe that most people want to add value. I believe that most people want to come in and be able to contribute to the success of the organization. And if that's the case, I believe that most people do want coaching. Could it be that those individuals just don't want coaching from us? And again, I think coaching accessible to all. And I think if we start to put people into uncoachable, can we just for a moment shine the light on ourselves? Is it that they don't want coaching, or is it something that I'm doing that they don't want coaching from me? So we'll explore that just a little bit. When you think about your own team, your own folks, is there something that you're doing that has not earned you the right to coach that individual? I don't think coaching is something we can do to someone. It's something that we need to choose to want to do. And I think that's part of our role in human resources is how do I build a coach culture of coaching? How do I equip leaders to become better coaches? Yes, they need to have the skill set, and I need to choose to want to coach you. You need to choose to want coaching from me. So this isn't just about teaching coaching skills. It's around helping our leaders recognize that they need to earn the right to coach as well. They need to show up in a way that people want or choose to want coaching from them. One of my favorite quotes is this, and I think it sits at the heart of this idea of this shining light on ourselves and this idea of being uncoachable. Treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they're capable of being. Do we see people? I recognize we need to manage performance as leaders, but in that moment of coaching, do I see you as a human being with potential? Do I see you as a human being who has the potential to do more, who has the potential to work at a different level? And that brings us really to quite often I see this idea of fix it coaching. We use coaching to sort of the last straw efforts to try and save someone inside the organization. And I would recommend that if you turn to coaching and fix it situations, that you think about the not so positive implications of that. If we bring in external coaches and fix it situations, one of the messages it sends is, we bring external folks to handle some of our performance challenges. It also changes what coaching means. Oh, you have a coach, it means you're on your way out. I believe, and it's something that we do to someone. Like if I'm invited in to do fix it coaching, that likelihood is that person has not chosen to be part of the conversation. That again, I need to want to coach, they need to want coaching from me. So when we think about coaching, are we able to expand our thinking to this? What's the potential impact if, again, directional, everyone in our organization has access to a coach? So wherever you are now, how do you look at expanding that accessibility of coaching? And I think that brings us to well, okay, if directionally we have access to this idea of coaching to those around us, like how do we identify the right coaching engagement and the right coach for whomever the audience is? And again, it's a question that quite often we're asked, and that's, well, how do you match the talent, the person being coached, with the right engagement? And again, I think it depends. It depends on who the individual is. It depends on what you're looking for the outcome to be. It depends on who they are. And I think that brings us to the next myth, and it's this. Well, if you have the budget, choose an external coach. They're always the better option. And again, I don't think necessarily the truth. I think sometimes external coaches are the better option. I think there are times where internal coaches or managers and leaders who are using coaching skills are the better option. So it's looking at different modalities of coaching. I think this is how we start to increase our accessibility of coaching, is by using one or more of these modalities. And I'm going to ask you, you see there's a polling question. I'm going to ask you to choose, and you can choose more than one, which of these modalities are currently being used inside your organization. External coach, internal coach, manager, leader using coaching skills, AI coaching, and of course, there's a none of the above option. So again, I'll invite you to choose one or more, or that none of the above. And if you could take an opportunity to complete that now, that'd be great. And this way we can see what some of the results are for that. Perfect. So I'm seeing pretty much an even split between managers, leaders using coaching skills, internal coaching, a good number of people with none of the above. I'm going to give it just a few more moments. AI coaching is looking a little bit at 0, which is interesting. We'll talk a little bit about AI coaching. That manager, leader using coaching skills seems to be, AI coaching has gotten a little bit of a nod from a few folks. Take just another few moments. And then I'll share with you some of the data from ICF, and our sister company HCI did some work on what does this mix look like now compared to what it looked like sort of pre-pandemic, 2014 to 2019. All right, last moments to get your votes in. Perfect. Thank you. All right, perfect. Thanks so much. Similar results to what we're seeing in some of the data. Again, this research, that these numbers come from ICF, International Federation of Coaching, and our sister organization HCI partnered for this. And what I think is interesting about this data is it shows that there's been an increase in external coach practitioners, an increase, and it's the same number we saw here, the largest number of people using managers and leaders using coaching skills. We don't have AI on this. And a decrease in internal coach practitioners, which I think is two things that I can sort of attribute to that decrease in internal coach practitioners. One is, I wonder, are we looking at that too narrowly? Like, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Like, can we even expand our thinking about how we look at internal coach practitioners? So I'd like to look at each modality, talk about what are some of the pros and cons. And I think it's important when we're choosing a coach. So yes, we need to look at budget, and is there an opportunity for us also to choose the right option for the individual who's being coached or for the audience who's being coached? External coaches, my guess is this is no surprise that there are pros and cons. Specialized skill set, fresh insights. Oftentimes, it's the person's outside. There's a perceived higher level of confidentiality. They have an unbiased perspective. Some of the cons, no shocker that it's a higher cost. There are availability challenges sometimes. They're unfamiliar with the organization. There potentially may be some inconsistencies, et cetera. So when we look at this idea of choosing an external coach, here's one of the things that we hear that, again, I think is a myth. Quite often, if people are like, well, I'm looking for a coach and I need a coach who has experience in my industry. And I think that's a myth. I think an effective coach does not have to have experience in the industry in which they're coaching. I do think that there are some best practices, and I'd like to share those with you. I think when we look at this idea of best practices for choosing the right external coach, we do need somebody who's educated and or accredited by a reputable program. Like they didn't just hang a shingle out on the door. I think that they do need to have relevant experience. It doesn't have to be in the industry, but they need to have relevant experience, whether it's at what that person's looking to develop or potentially they've experienced coaching C-suite. So again, I don't think industry specific, but it is having that relevant experience. Yes, I think this is sort of non-negotiable. It's that ethical standards, their philosophy around coaching, references. The last two, I think sometimes we miss. I think what I see inside organizations is that, okay, we have these 3 coaches that we go to, or this one coach that we go to. And I think when I'm on the receiving end, when I'm the person being coached, I need to choose. I need to choose to want coaching from them because without that trust, the likelihood is it won't be the best engagement that it could be. So do we get the person being coached in the selection process? And one of the tools, if you will, we provide a slide with what are some potential screening questions. So if I'm a talent, I'm going to be working with a coach, internal or external. I want to find somebody that I'm comfortable with, that I'm confident, that I trust, and that again that I picked as somebody who would be well suited for me. Again, some potential coach screening questions like, oh, how did they find their way into this profession? What's some of the characteristics of the talent that they work with that works best for them? What would they consider a successful coaching engagement to be? Just helps to start to formulate that relationship that's so important for effective coaching to take place. So that's external coaches. Internal coaches, again, pros and cons. And I think historically, internal coaches have looked like this. We hire a coach and they coach full time. And really that the pros and cons here are from that philosophy where this person is a full-time coach. And quite often it can be cost effective. I pay the person's on staff and we can use them to coach multiple individuals. They're rooted in the organization. They have flexibility. They see the person at work, so can see things that an external coach wouldn't see. It does start to embed a coaching culture in the organization. There's some cons, and again, it depends on their role. There could be some credibility issues, all they're internal. There could be some confidentiality issues. There could be some bias issues. There could be some qualification issues. So again, pros and cons for the internal coaches. I do think that there is a myth around internal coaches, and it's this, that they need to coach full time. And I recognize we've shifted from there. A lot of times part of the HR business partners role is there's a coaching role as well. And other organizations that we've worked with look outside the HR function to build coaching capabilities inside different functions. So we're working with one organization where they have a different cohort every year, and they've built an internal cadre of 50 plus coaches. Now, these individuals keep their day job, and a small percentage of their time is dedicated to coaching others. It's wildly popular because I know who the coaches are inside the organization and I can tap them. And they keep their job. So if you think about what that means for the person who's able to coach and be an engineer or whatever their function is, it taps into a different skill set for them. It develops them. And the access these other individuals have to coaches inside the business has a phenomenal impact. So might we look at internal coaches differently? Can we build up, potentially depending on the organization, a cadre of individuals in different functions who can serve as internal coaches, just a part of their job? Some identifying and selecting internal coaches, is there a process for it? Do I do, and the organizations which we work with to do this, they define the expectations of this internal coach, percentage of time, how many coaching clients. They also choose to be in that program, if you will. They choose to be identified as an internal coach, and the organization chooses them as potential internal coaches. Yes, we need to provide training for them, create a system for matching, provide continuous support, monitor and evaluate the process. Again, I think that's another way that we can start to make coaching more accessible to others. Here's the other thing that sometimes we hear is, well, Joan, coaching is a soft skill. So I need to be really careful about who I choose to coach, who I choose to be this internal coach, or even as I choose to help managers and leaders inside the organization become better coaches. It's not a soft skill. Like, we look at a definition of hard skills, it's this: technical or practical abilities that are acquired through training, education, experience. Coaching is a technical or practical ability that's accumulated through training, education, and experience. It's really not a soft skill. Are there some personality traits that come naturally or more naturally to better coaches? When I look around at the individuals that are coaches inside organizations, many different personality traits. And they bring themselves to those coaching engagements because they've acquired skills, they've been educated, they've gotten feedback on their coaching, and they've leveraged their strengths, the strengths of their own soft skills. So if we think about this idea of internal coaches, another offshoot of that is, are we developing our managers and leaders at all levels of the organization to be coach like? And that's where I think the biggest bang for our buck is. And I saw that in the percentages that many of you are doing this. There are, I think, though, best practices for training managers and leaders as coaches. And we've had tons of experience training managers and leaders. And there are some things that I think we sometimes forget. Yes, I need to train them on the skills and techniques, but I also need to help leaders recognize that coaching is a mindset and it's not just the doing. I ask questions, I do this. It's a being. I need to earn the right to coach. How do I show up? What impact am I having on others? And I think part of how we help leaders and managers become better coaches is not just by teaching them the right questions to ask, although extremely important, but helping them realize how they show up. That being piece is so important. Have I earned the right to coach? I also think that if we're not practicing when we're training leaders and we're not giving feedback to the leaders when they're practicing coaching, we're doing them a disservice. And I also think if we're having them practice in role plays, we're doing a disservice. Have them practice real life coaching. Right? If I'm in a coaching workshop and I'm a participant and you're a participant, and I want you to coach me on something real to me, and then I'll give you feedback on your coaching. Have them practice coaching in real life situations, not in role plays. Then if we think about, make sure there's some type of a model around what does great coaching look like. And I'll share our model quickly because I think it's important that it's not just the doing of coaching. Our models are Bluepoint's models a three-piece model. And the first piece is the foundation. That's around character. I need to be seen as someone that people want coaching from. If I'm not seen as somebody that people want coaching from, the likelihood is that that person is not going to be open and transparent with me. I need to build connections with them. I need to be able to be present. I need to listen differently. I need to connect with them in a way that sees them as a partner. And I need to be able to engage in conversations that others will not. So if we look at coaching, not just as, yes, I ask these great questions, but as I show up in a coach like way that people want coaching from me. I also think that one of the pieces we miss in training leaders to coach is helping them know when to coach. Like if we look at coaching, it's just one of the tools that I use as a leader. I also need to direct, I need to advise, I need to teach, I need to mentor, and I need to coach. And if we don't help leaders recognize what does it look like, and when do I do each of these, not helpful. Like, yes, coaching is really impactful, but coaching is really impactful when coaching is the right tool to use. So, part of that training needs to take that into consideration. So, it's the who, the being of who I am, the how, and the when. All three critically important when I'm training a leader to become more coach like inside the organization. The modality that we haven't talked a lot about is AI coaches and AI coaching. And I think there are pros and cons to that. The pros and cons, likely, you know what the pros and cons are. Yes, I do think it complements human-led coaching. One of the things that AI coaching does is it can assimilate a lot of data, 360, and other data points, and look at, well, okay, based on this, what might be the development opportunity. Another, of course, pro is it's accessible 24/7. It's scalable. The AI coach can model coach-like behaviors. I think there's some downsides. I think confidentiality, lack of personal human touch, limited contextual understanding, a lot of misinterpretations. So it's how are we using it? Are we using it in a way that complements the human touch coaching that we currently have? I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about, as a coach, what I think currently, what are some of the things that AI coaching can't do yet? They can't show empathy. Like if I'm coaching someone, I can, even if I'm coaching on the phone or on Zoom, I can listen for, I can see different changes in tone, body language. I can feel when what they say doesn't match with the tone of their language. I get to know who they are, and I get to kind of dig in a bit. And that, of course, an AI coach can't do yet. I also think that the AI coach doesn't celebrate success, right? Like if I'm a coach and I'm helping my talent to set short-term milestones, part of my role is to help them look back and celebrate successes. Again, something I think that's missing from the AI piece of the puzzle currently. So again, compliments and really tough for it to replace some of the human pieces of coaching. Um, Another myth, and I think this is another way we can make it coaching accessible to more, is the myth that it's best done one-on-one. I think group coaching, coaching circles, is there an opportunity to do team coaching? When we look at our population inside our organization, is there an opportunity for us to engage with some team coaching or some group coaching? Coaching circles, and here's how we define team coaching, and I think group coaching typically used in the same way. Coaching circles a little bit different. Coaching circles are that we set up coaching circles of peers, and somebody brings a challenge on which they'd like to be coached, and the individuals in that coaching circle coach them on their real life challenge, and then there's some feedback involved. So that starts to build the capacity to coach, as well as getting some of our leaders real life coaching experience and real life coaching. Like to shift from this idea of sort of the coaching engagement and how do I match people up to preparing the talent and the coach. And I think when I look at some of the clients that we work with, that organizations are better at preparing the coach for an engagement than preparing the talent. So if we think about, how can you best prepare the talent for coaching engagement, is to be thoughtful about, okay, do they know what to expect? Do they know what's expected of them? Do they know that this is a safe space? Do they know the process and length? Do they know what their role is? Do they know what to expect from a coach? Do they know what coaching is? That the person's not going to come and give them a whole bunch of advice. So, what's the process inside your organization for preparing someone to be the talent? Um, One of the resources that we have for you, there's a QR code here, as well as it's one of the resources that I think is being put, I know is being put into the the Slido for you, is something that maybe you would want to look at and tailor for your organization. It's called Getting the Most Out of Leadership Coaching. Like, can we help the talent be more equipped so that they know what to expect, they know what's expected of them, and there's no second guesses around, again, what's this process about for them, what's in it for them, and what, again, we expect from them. I think the other piece is, and I think organizations do this well, is preparing the coach. And whether you do a coaching intake form, or there's assessments that you use, or stakeholder interviews, it's making sure, again, that you have a process for that. What are you looking to get out of the coaching engagement? How can you best prepare the coach to get that? And what do you need to do ahead of time? Like to spend some time on sort of the I think big question that people often ask is, okay, like this coaching thing, how do I measure? How do I measure progress? How do I measure results? And I do think there is a myth that you can't measure the impact of coaching. Like, I think you can. I think that, it's thinking through, what do I want to capture before the engagement. I think it can be difficult, right, to capture and quantify data. Um, and there are things that we can think about so that we can capture and quantify data. And again, organizations ask us this all the time. Well, how do I measure the ROI? And I think it depends, right? I think it depends on, what are you looking to measure? Am I looking to measure retention or turnover or engagement? Am I looking to expand my bench? Am I looking, I can measure promotions. Am I looking to help people in new roles? So it's thinking about, what is it that I want to measure, and then quantifying and tracking that. Surveys, interviews, questionnaires, polling. So again, it's being really thoughtful about, what am I looking to measure? And what am I going to put into place to measure whatever that is? And we do have a resource for this as well. Again, it's strategies to evaluate the ROI of coaching, to help you think through, okay, what do I want to measure? And what do I need to do in order to make sure I can measure that? I do know that it is possible to share, to measure, to quantify some of the return on investment. I'll share three brief case studies with you. And each three of these organizations were looking to measure something different. The first is at a Mayo Clinic. And what they were looking to measure was burnout. So we're going pre-pandemic 2019. They were seeing high burnout in their mid-career physicians. So they chose to measure whether coaching had an impact, mid-career physicians, on those characteristics associated with burnout. And here's what they found. They found that the impact of coaching to combat mid-career physician burnout achieved the following: emotional exhaustion decreased, symptoms of burnout decreased. They redid this study again post-pandemic with surgeons, and they found the same results. So again, they chose to measure those characteristics associated with burnout, and they were able to identify quantifiable results. Enbridge, pipeline and energy company in Canada, they were looking for, it's interesting, they were looking for a change in culture, looking to go from more the command and control to more participative organization. So they wanted to help their leaders move from this to this. And there was more anecdotal, right? The leader shared with us that people were clamoring to get into the workshop because they heard people wanted to work for certain leaders who started showing up in a more coach-like manner. So a bit more anecdotal, but they knew what they wanted to measure. Cleveland Clinic, This was during the pandemic. They were looking at retention. So they were looking to measure retention. They used internal coaches. Over 160 physicians confirmed that coaching was a key factor in their decision to stay. And then they measured it with dollars, 84 million US dollars in savings. So it's interesting. 3 case studies. Cleveland Clinic wanted to measure retention, used internal coaches. Mayo, burnout, external coaches. Enbridge, more of a culture shift, used training their managers and leaders. So again, it's what do I want to measure? What am I looking to increase, decrease, etc.? What's the best way for me to go about doing that? I think one of the things we miss in measurement is communicating and capturing success stories. Like, value is not limited to facts and figures. And I think sometimes we miss looking at capturing and communicating coaching success stories. And I think it's like, okay, well, how do I collect that data? And I think we can collect data. This is not about damaging the confidentiality between the coach and the talent, but it is about tapping into the talent. It's asking them, what's changed and what's worked, and what does that mean? And it's about tapping into the talent's team. What's changed? What have you seen happen? And I'll share 2 stories. This is with one of the organizations that we worked with. And this is from the leaders. The leaders shared this. One was a dollar amount. One of the leaders shared that new to role, fairly junior, was working with one of the Bluepoint coaches and had a bit of imposter syndrome. And throughout the course of the coaching time, started to not only speak up, but offer suggestions. And the one of the suggestions that this individual made that said they never would have made had they not started to increase their confidence because of the coaching engagement, was a $280,000 annual savings. So the client was like, okay, that kind of pays for the coaching engagement plus, 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 plus. The dollar amount attached to that. Another story similar, the leader talked about the low engagement on their team. And they came into the coaching engagement saying, I don't, my team this, my team that, my team this. And the leader said by the end of the coaching engagement, it was, I've impacted that. It wasn't my team. It was how I was showing up for my team. And of course, they saw more engagement, more alignment, more commitment from their team. And they owned it. So again, 2 very different stories, but do we capture those so that we can add that to the ROI story as well? So throughout the course of our time, we explored the coaching process: selection, process management, measurement, looking at, well, how can I directionally make coaching more accessible? How can I look at the different modalities of coaching to make coaching more accessible to all? How can I set people up for success, the talent and the coach? And then how do I measure it so that I make sure that coaching is a tool that is moving the needle in the right direction inside the organization? We looked at 8 coaching myths. And again, you have access to this in your slide deck. From coaching should be reserved for top of the house, to some people are uncoachable, to you can't measure the impact of coaching. I'd like to leave you with a few thoughts. One is, I think we can make coaching more accessible if we think about it even more broadly, differently. I think a lot of times we think about coaching, the formal, ongoing coaching, that sort of external coach or even an internal coach in the organization. What if we looked at it that there are many opportunities for managers and leaders to coach in the moment? Doesn't have to be a one-on-one. Could be a 10-minute conversation. It could be before a meeting or after meeting. And what that helps us to do is build a more universal coach-like approach where coaching is more accessible by a larger number of individuals. I think another way to look at it, and this is Bluepoint's bias on leadership, is that leadership happens one conversation at a time. And really, coaching is about conversations. So we helping our leaders, our managers, those around us to have conversations that matter? Are we helping them bring a coach-like aspect to the conversations that they have? I'm really grateful that you chose to spend time with us. I do want to offer, if there's anything that I can do or we can do to be helpful, any questions, there's my email address is there, or some websites. I'll also share with you some of the work that we do with other clients. We have a wonderful coach training workshop called Leader as Coach that we've had the honor of partnering with organizations all over the world to help them build those managers and coach like leaders. We also have a typically a cohort based workshop where we build internal coaches. And it's called Mastering the Art of Coaching. Again, wonderful opportunity to tap into the skill sets of some of your leaders to help them make coaching a part of their role. As well, HCI, our sister brand, this is for HR professionals, has a coaching for engagement and performance certification. This does three things. It helps build the skills of the HR professional as a coach, first part of it. Then it dives into, well, how do I help leaders in my organization become more coach like? And thirdly, how can I help build a coaching culture? So that's a certification for HR professionals. As well, Bluepoint Leadership Development does have a wonderful cadre of external coaches if that's something that your organization is looking for. Lastly, we do have a corporate membership. This is a Bluepoint corporate membership, which gives the individuals access to a coach as well as access to certain areas of training and resources. Again, thank you so much for your time. If there's anything that we can do to be helpful, please reach out. I am going to pass it back over to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you for this really enlightening and interactive presentation today. I know that our members appreciate to be involved. And also, I want to remind the members that please utilize the resources that are in the links. And if you go back to view the on-demand, they will be there as well. So again, thank you. And now I just want to remind HCI members that today's webcast has been approved for HRCI and SHRM credit, as well as for HCI recertification. Your credits for attending this webcast will soon show up in your My HCI profile under the transcript tab. And while you're there, don't forget to check out hci.org for even more insights, as well as information on our certifications, future conferences, premium membership, and more. So I'd just like to say one more thank you to Joan, our presenter today, and to Bluepoint Leadership Development. And to you, the webcast viewer, thank you. And thank you again for your participation. Thanks for spending the hour with us, and we'll certainly see you all next time. Have a great afternoon, everyone.